Hello and welcome back to Spirit Man Studios, and today we're giving my movie review of How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World. DreamWorks has been kind of one of my favorite animation studios for a while. Not above Disney, right? But in terms of the quality of movies that they make, the How to Train Your Dragon movies in particular, the first and second one, they have been pretty good for the most part. I liked the first one really good. It came out of nowhere in 2010. And then in 2014, you had How to Train Your Dragon 2, which some people didn't quite like as much as the first one, but honestly, I liked them both just fine. And I felt like the villain in the second movie actually was kind of interesting to look at. Not exactly the best villain of all time, but definitely better than some other villains I've seen as of late. But when it comes to How to Train Your Dragon 3: The Hidden World, I feel like it's a pretty natural conclusion. Now, it didn't really exceed my expectations. It's a movie that is completely fine, right? I felt it was good for a lot of qualities, but when it came to the storyline, I felt it could have used a little bit something more. I felt like I kind of knew where the story was going, and in that sense, that's good. That's some good storytelling. It didn't try anything, subversive. It didn't try anything. It didn't try anything unexpected, right? There's a couple moments in here where I felt there could have been that unexpected. Oh shit, that just happened. But for the most part, I kind of felt myself kind of getting through the movie just fine. And I think that's just kind of on the fault of the plot. The plot's very simple. It's a very simple plot. When you really look at it, you have Hiccup, who is the new chief of Burke after a year after the sequel, which is kind of funny since this movie in particular has been made 5 years after the last installment. But whatever, the 1 year time jump is kind of weird. But it pretty much follows Hiccup and the Dragon Riders as they're trying to liberate more and more dragons and trying to push for more of a, hey, we can all live together in harmony sort of thing. But then you have Grimmel, can't remember who voices him, but you have Grimmel, who is a sort of retired dragon hunter of sorts. He's kind of that person that's just kind of in the background, and he gets word that Hiccup has a Night Fury, and he is on the hunt once again to try to take down the last Night Fury. And so you have this plot where, Hiccups and it is trying to get everyone on the run from Burke. They have to leave Burke because it's getting overcrowded with dragons, and they get pushed out of the island, partly because of that and partly because of Gremmel. And so they're on the run, trying to get to a new island as well as to try to find the hidden world where dragons can pretty much live in peace without the harm of humanity. And this is a very, again, as I said before, I kind of knew where this movie was going, and it wasn't like Toy Story 3 in a way. I know a lot of people are trying to compare this movie to Toy Story 3, and at times it could seem like that. The ending itself, not the full ending, not the epilogue of sorts, but the way the film ends the immediate conflict before the epilogue and all that, it kind of did feel like a Toy Story 3 type moment where things have to be said and yada yada yada. Can't really go into spoilers, but it did kind of get a little bit teary-eyed in certain moments. Where this film actually succeeds is the character animation and the characterization of certain things and people, and dragons, of course. One particular sequence in particular I would point to in this fact is the Light Fury Toothless flight dance, as it were, I guess. It's this whole sequence in the film. There's no talking, no dialogue. It's all animation, and it's all music. And it's so brilliantly done. Like the way that they animate the way they animate Toothless and the Light Fury, having this sort of back and forth between each other, is so well realized and it's so beautiful to look at. And it gets me into the notion of them being together. I really enjoyed that. And even prior to that scene, you have Toothless trying to gain the favor of this Light Fury, trying to figure out the ways of love. Because, to him, he thought he was the only sort of Fury left in the world. And so for him to try to relearn some of the courtships of being a Fury is something that's both entertaining and very interesting to watch. And that whole sequence between the Light Fury and Toothless during that whole segment is very beautiful. It's very well done. The colors are just beautiful in this movie. I think with every single one of these movies, all three of these How to Train Your Dragon movies, they're some of the most beautiful movies I've looked at in quite some time. And, even this movie is no exception. I really enjoyed pretty much everything in terms of the animation, the detail, the way characters move, the way, again, how Toothless acts like a cat, it's adorable. I loved all that. I loved the Light Fury even, the new character. And even stuff that she shows, there's always something for Toothless to do. And some of it can be a little bit surprising, the amount of things that Toothless can do in this movie that's a little bit new that we haven't seen before, which is pretty great. The only exception that I have with this movie is Gremmel. Gremmel is the worst villain I've ever seen. And it's not necessarily the fact that he's a bad villain, but it's just like his motivation is so one-dimensional. Everything about his character just seems so flat. And we've seen the trope before. We've seen this character before in many other different types of movies. Oh, I'm trying to hunt, the gorillas in Tarzan. Or, I'm trying to hunt all these characters. And I'm like, I've seen this before. Can you, change it up a little bit? Maybe add some nuances? No? Nothing? I don't know. It just seems to me that, the villain in this one just is kind of an understatement. And that's kind of where a lot of the film just kind of falls flat, is Gremmel. And granted, it doesn't fully deflate the movie in any way. It's still good on its own with the own character dynamics between Astrid and Hiccup, the conflict between Hiccup and his tribe, and him trying to combat Gremmel, and the possibility of having to say goodbye to Toothless. There's a lot of things that happen in this movie that are pretty good, but the only exception is the villain. The villain doesn't really get a lot of characterization other than the things that he tells Toothless. Or not Toothless, but Hiccup, right? He says, oh, I knew your father. It's like, okay, any other particulars? Anything else? That's pretty much it. The epilogue itself is kind of a nice little closed ender for me. I don't think this franchise should continue, right? Even though it's kind of a weird ending. Not really weird, but kind of a dour ending, especially for those who want to have more of a positive-ish ending. It's still quite positive in the sense that it's kind of reminiscent of a very early Pokemon episode. Now, I'm not going to tell you which one it is because it will spoil it, but if you know the Indigo League, if you know the original Pokemon episodes, you'll remember a particular episode in that, considering, a certain flying type Pokemon. But that's all I'm going to say, right? How to Train Your Dragon 3 is definitely one of the better animated films of the year. It's perfectly fine to watch this weekend, and it's a really fun movie, and it does tie up very neatly the story of Hiccup and Toothless, their relationship with each other, as well as the evolution of Hiccup, finally getting to its penultimate step, even with his relationship with Astrid and the village itself and everything else. I feel like it ended very rightly, very, very neatly, right? Just very neatly. And that's just all I have to say. It's beautifully animated. It has a good voice cast. There's some creative new dragon designs, and the ending itself just leaves it on a very perfect ending note that if they ever do another Dragons movie, I don't know if they'll ever be able to do anything with it. I think Hiccups and Toothless' story is done. I think Burke is done. I'm not entirely sure if they ever... I don't think they should ever do another one. Again, the marketing says it's the epic conclusion. Let it be the epic conclusion. This is the ending, right? Don't make a Toy Story 4. Don't make a Dragons 4. Just leave it here. I think that's most I could say. I'm going to give How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World a B+. It's a really good animated movie. It's probably one of the better ones of the year so far. I'll have to wait and see what other animated films come out, but yeah, can't wait to see what else is in store, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.